Welcome to Unlabelled and Limitless. In this episode, we dive deep into personal growth, career journeys, and the power of a beginner's mindset. Let's get started.
I call it a reset. It's a reset for me to have beginner's mindset. And so with your new schooling, you have recently graduated, which is great. Congratulations. That is a feat in and of itself. With your expertise and knowledge and just personal passion, I think it's really more important now than ever to really understand where, from a career and personal point of view, where your strengths are and how to apply that into a career that's fulfilling. I have a beginner's mindset right now, and you walk me through as if I'm a client. Where would you start with me?
So I think the first thing really is to understand how a person sees themselves. So the starting point very much is where are you at right now and where do you see yourself and what do you think your actual strengths are? Because how you see yourself is an impact on how other people see you. And there's a lot of cliches, right? You can't take care of somebody until you take care of yourself. You can't love someone until you love yourself. But I think that part of those things in loving yourself and caring for yourself and things come from understanding what you're good at and working in that space of strength 70% of the time, right? Because we don't get to do what we want all the time. Nobody gets to have perfect life, regardless of what it looks like on social media or when you see that perfect person walking down the street looking amazing, whatever it is, right? Everybody's got something they struggle with, something they find really easy, something they just find impossible. And again, we emphasize what success looks like in our society, right? And it looks like a well tailored suit and an office overlooking a park in New York City where you can roast all day and complain that it's too hot because the building's AC doesn't work properly or whatever, right? And that you've had to sit on a sweaty train to get there. That's what we say success is. Being able to sit down and eat the steak dinner in the back room of a fancy restaurant and have the wine free flowing and be able to make these deals or whatever it is. And when you look at all those successful people, and believe me, I see behind the scenes by nature of what I do. And when you look at those successful people, there's a serious level of sacrifice that comes along with that that isn't talked about in school when we're thinking of these fancy careers, even on career day. So, hey, kids, bring somebody in for career day. Bring in an auntie or an uncle, and they stand there and they give a kid, oh, I'm a pilot. I get to fly in planes. I get to do this, that, and the other. They're not standing there saying, you know what, kids, and I'm not suggesting that kids take drugs, by the way, but they're not standing there saying, hey, kids, you literally can never take drugs. If you want to be a pilot, most of the stuff other kids do in their frat houses or for fun at some point, you just can't do. You are going to have to study these specific subjects and you're going to have to be so good at what you do. And so then kids are like, yeah, when I grow up, I want to be a pilot. And I'm also a bit of a realist. I'm like, it's not realistic for most people. However, there's people that don't believe they can be a pilot that should because they can and they would be amazing. And they're not exposed to knowing that that's a career that they can follow. And then you've got these other people that, yeah, I want to be a pilot because so and so's dad is a pilot. And it looks really fun to fly planes and press buttons. And it's not that there's a yeah, and then there's tons of engineering jobs within aeronautical and aerospatial engineering. And where are those career paths for the future engineers that are currently wondering, what can I do? Because they're not the people that get seen on career days. Super fun things. There's kids that can't pass a math test, but they could strip an engine down and put it back together again and tell you what's wrong with it and tell you how to improve it. So I think in general, we have to find different ways to help younger people understand that they have strengths and skills and abilities that A, they may not have discovered yet, B, they may not have had nurtured because the system that they're in just doesn't cater to what it is that they need or have or can be. And we need to stop putting younger people in these boxes that tell you you've got to become a tradesperson, or you've got to become an academic, or you've got to become this, that, and the other, because most people, when they graduate, don't do the jobs that they went to university to study. And I don't know how many people at 14, 13, 15 years old are told that. Most people with a psychology degree end up being accountants. And it's because, hey, we do statistics, we do numbers, we can use programs, we're whatever. Tons of people that work in finance have got English degrees, history degrees, art degrees, and whatever else. So a lot of people don't end up following their dreams. Their dream may have been whatever they went to school for. And then, hey, I go into this career and now I'm boxed in. And while we sit there and think, because I used to work with adults with developmental disabilities, but that's what I was doing when I first met you. And I worked in a group home and the hours were long and grueling and things. And my friends were all working in banking and earning loads of money, and they could go out at nighttime and do this, that, and the other. But I knew I was not fulfilled with what I was doing. I knew that I had way more fun than they could ever have. Because when we'd sit down at the tables, their stories would be boring about, oh, yeah, this thing messed up in this spreadsheet and da 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 da. And I'd be like, oh my God, let me tell you about my client that pulled their pants down in the middle of the floor and took shit. And it's like, and I always treat my clients with dignity, and they're not my clients. That's the wrong terminology. I don't, I am that now that the individuals that we work with are, it's been a long time since I worked in that field, so I don't know the updated terminology. I just know people tell me off when I use the wrong stuff, and I'm like, but like, there was also really endearing stories about like when somebody did something for the first time in 20 years of like trying to learn a skill, and it's like the tiniest little thing, but they did it and you're like glowing with pride. And it's like, pretty sure well, I mean, I've got office stories too, but when I worked then in an office space afterwards, I used to stand and look and think, I worked in group homes with people who are severe to profoundly developmentally disabled, and they can sort the recycling. They know where things go. They can wash their plates, put them in the dishwasher, leave the refrigerator clean. And I'm standing here with a bunch of people that are paid like 2,000 plus a year with bonuses who don't know how to do that. It would blow my mind. How is this possible that you've lacked these life skills? But they do. So it's interesting because it's like what we choose to teach people or what we choose is important for those people to learn. And something that I raise quite a lot when I'm in conversation with people is, if we as regular human beings that exist independently in the world actually had to go through the process that people with developmental disabilities have to go through to live independently, most of us would fail. Most of us would fail. Cook yourself a basic meal, be able to clear things away, know how to wash your clothes and change your clothes every day and do this, that, and the other, right? And we set these rigorous standards, and I watch up to just multiple people with developmental disabilities on a daily basis having their like charts marked as to whether they did these things. And I'm like, yeah, I got friends that literally can't do these things and wouldn't do them if beat them with a big stick, right? And I think we're just so fixated. And I know I mentioned to you earlier on, A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley is my absolute favorite book. And I don't know if you've actually read the book, but this book was written in 1932, 1934, and it is essentially what I'm talking about right now, but a little bit more sci-fi. And that in his future. People didn't have babies anymore. Babies were born in tubes, and each person was created to perform very specific functions in society. And they worked empathy out of humanity so that we understood, hey, when we die, it's a good thing because our bodies become phosphorus, which helps keep powering the world, right? And they would give people drugs every day, soma, so that they would just stay chill and happy with their place in the world, and everybody had something to do. But they had to create more and more complex and ridiculous jobs for people to do because of how, right? So they got a specific group of people that were burst, especially to fix aeroplanes while they're in motion. And then there's another group of people, that these super intelligent kids that play these really complicated games of golf. And been my favorite book since I was 18, and still to this day, sorry, I read it over and over again because I see us becoming more and more that. And when I studied my undergrad, I majored in psychology and minored in sociology. And one of the things that we studied in sociology was the McDonaldization of society.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that there's a book on it. And I think Michael Foucault had written a lot about this saming of everything and how we're systemizing everything. And hey, a McDonald's, and it was the McDonaldization because at the time it was, oh, McDonald's here should be exactly the same as here, and the process is the same, right? And occasionally you get these local dishes, but it's very much everything else is the same. And then that's when credit cards were just becoming really big and everybody getting their own little bank cards and things, and is moving away from checks. So there was great debate happened in our classes and lessons about this at the time. But I see these patterns repeating. And I think what we've done is we're trying to create this monolithic version of humanity or different types of humans. And then we expect people to stay in their lanes, right? Stay in your lane. Hey, you're poor. You're not supposed to be at Wall Street living the dream. Stay in your lane. Hey, you work with people with developmental disabilities in a nonprofit and don't earn that much money. So who are you to come and try and have an intelligent conversation? You wipe people's asses for a living and teach them how to hold their spoon, right? Stay in your lane. And it's in actual fact, what you are exposed to working in an environment like that is human beings in their most pure, raw, and unfiltered, unmasked form, because there is the cognition and the ability to create the amount of filters that we can create for ourselves to exist in these different formats. So what you actually see is a purer form of the trigger, build up, the behavior, the aftermath. And you see it without all of these contrived ways of trying to hide whatever it is. It's really effing hungry right now, and I think you need to feed me. And I'm just gonna smash the windows until you give me what I want. Right. And it's like learning behavioral psychology from such a blessed perspective, when you then walk into an office environment, it's very easy to see beneath the masks very quickly, because you're okay. I just saw that thing happen and that thing happen, and then this, and this. And while you think it's because somebody fucked up your PowerPoint slide, in actual fact, it's because you're an asshole and your socks are uncomfortable right now, right? Whatever it is. So it gives you this different insight. But yeah, it was unexpected for me to go and get a degree and then go work in a nonprofit for not a lot of money. And it was, what are you doing, Lois? Why aren't you chasing the money? Why aren't you going into a job that you could do, right? But it was a job that I absolutely loved. I have no regrets of. It taught me a lot. It brought me where I am today. And it was not something I ever thought I would do as a career. And never in a million years thought I would spend years working in group homes with adults with dual diagnosis. wasn't in the cards. I thought, I'm going to go to university and I'll be a psychologist the next day. And awesome. Not that I ever cared about starting at the bottom, but the UK doesn't have as many opportunities as the US. So here they're like, come fresh, we'll train you. In the UK, they're like, if you don't have 5 years, don't apply. Right. So there's this as well. We set expectations for kids going through school, for getting into their careers. And yeah, go get an education, go do what? Well, unless you've got rich parents that know somebody that has a business, where's your internship? Right? Unless you've got access to somewhere like New York City, where there are a lot of opportunities. Where your opportunities, if you're in the middle of Wisconsin and the closest village or town is 15 miles away, right? And you're living in farmland or whatever it is. So we put these expectations, we build these systems, we tell people what the measures of success are in our society, including on social media now, which is mostly fake anyway. And then we go, why did you fail? My God, look at you. You're in your 30s. Why did you fail? Lois, you're 44, self-employed and pretend to work every day and these, right? And it's like, because society did me down and did me dirty and didn't tell me that there were these other things. And to be fair, my mum always did, which is why I took these other paths to what was expected. Because my mum was always, yeah, go take that path, go be that thing, try it. And if you fail, at least you know you tried it, whatever. So I've never been afraid to fail because I wasn't raised to be afraid to fail. And I think that's something with a lot of people as well, is from cultural aspect of things. A lot of people's expectation is there is no such thing as failure, right? And I know within different cultural backgrounds, there's expectations of how old you should be when you get married, like what kind of an education you should have, what should you do after you get that education. Like I know a lot of females in America go and get college degrees purely so that they can meet a husband, which shocked me because I thought America was a very female career-driven country. And then I'm like, wait, to me, that seems antiquated, but that's like a cultural thing where a lot of women go to university in their younger years to meet an eligible suitor or something, and like each to their own and things. But that was a cultural shock to me, that like America, that you think of being super forward, that gave us Sex in the City, is like, oh, a lot of people don't go to college so that they can actually have a career. They go to college so that they can live a traditional American lifestyle. And great that then I know in other cultures, and I was watching an Indian comedian last week and she was joking about doctors. And she was like, oh, no PhDs, no PhDs. And she's like, we need doctors. And they're just like, cardiologists, great. Yeah, we don't start low with any internists or anything. But it was like, then she talked about her third child and she's like, it's fine, be an eye doctor. Like, my daughter's in Stanford, my middle child's really good looking. You could go be an eye doctor. We've got this covered now. She's making light of it, but it is clearly their cultural expectations, because I know a heck of a lot of Indian and Pakistani families that have that expectation within their family. And it's like, don't be a lawyer. That's not what we do in our family. We're doctors, we're engineers, we're whatever. And think all of those things have just created this really weird world where we've gone from being in our tribes and all understanding what it is that we do to being in a multitude of other people's tribes and not quite understanding where we position within those. We're not hunter-gatherers anymore, but we still have those hunter-gatherer instincts. So how do you then, instead of creating these monolithic McDonaldized societies where everything's the same and expected, how do you make allowances for the unexpected without it being disruption? How do you create balance in a company where, hey, you might have somebody with ADHD that can hyperfocus, but they can't control that hyperfocus. So you need something on the other side of that to keep it going when the focus is up there. So let's work on how we build this team around it so things get handed off at the right times efficiently and keep things moving along. Also, kind of releasing from that idea of, I need to be a manager by this age because then that's successful. And we need money to live. We need to feel fulfilled and successful within ourselves and to other people around us, right? Because that success kind of then flows outwards to other people. Yeah. But let's measure it on how successful our relationships are. Let's measure it on how successful we are at learning to leverage the community that we have around us to bring that support together, because nobody creates success on their own. And we live in a very individualistic way where it's an individual failing of our moral whatever because we didn't achieve the thing. But in actual fact, it's not. It's society's failing, because if we don't give people the tools they need to succeed, then you can't blame them for not succeeding. And I think that's what we've done. We've just gone so much into the categorization and the wanting to pigeonhole and everything else. And then, yeah, everybody's got a label now and everybody's getting diagnosed with ASD or ADHD or this, that, and the other. And I read a really interesting comment a few days ago that it's not necessarily that everybody's getting diagnosed now. It's dyslexia was a few years ago, where people finally started to understand what dyslexia was. And then it had its moment in the sun as people came to understand it better, as the education changed, as the information updated and things. So we're more at a place in the sun right now with neurodivergence, because it's an umbrella term to begin with that includes at the moment 7 or 8 different categories. So it has autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, OCD, Tourette's, and bipolar 2 is on the fringes of it at the moment. I'm sure I've probably missed some others that are on the fringes right now where they're looking to say, is this a mental illness? Or is this a divergence in the brain chemistry and how the brain developed, which means that person thinks differently? Because if you're trying to fix an illness, that's very different to understanding that somebody has a difference that can't be fixed, that creates a divergence in how you see, feel, act, and respond. We can do certain things to balance the chemicals, but we can't change the way that that thing exists, right? So with bipolar, with any mental illness, an illness suggests there's a cure for it. But if your brain chemistry is different, if your synapses fire differently to other people, if the chemical makeup's different, you're never going to fit into those boxes, because you can't fit into those boxes because you are literally different. You'll find as you move more into this journey with Unlabelled and Limitless, and maybe speak to Ian and Faye, who are both diagnosed with ASD, which is the autism spectrum disorder. So they're at that level 1, which used to be called Asperger's. And there's a debate whether or not it was a good idea to take the word Asperger's out of the rhetoric, because now there's just this huge umbrella term for autism that really does include a lot of very extreme differences in how it presents, how people function, how they act, how they behave. And that's coming from within the autism community. And they're like, we get it. Hans Asperger's was a Nazi bastard. However, we just don't even need to acknowledge the guy. We just call it Asperger's. We don't need to remember that he did all these experiments and stuff. And we can move on, but keep it as a separate thing from autism, because it isn't the same thing entirely. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities, but now they've got this level 1 autism. Well, sometimes I'm a level 2 as well, but you told me I'm a level 1. So now maybe I'm getting I've got needs here that are going to get missed because you categorize me here, right? And it's a little bit more, now there's 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes for autism, and you got, so I've gone on the weave again. I forgot where it was going. But yeah, I think it's important for us at Unlabelled and Limitless to really take those labels, dive underneath them, and then take them away. And which is where the name came from as well, Unlabelled and Limitless, right? Because what do those labels do for us? Well, most people that get a diagnosis in later life will then go and tell people, hey, I've got a diagnosis, find very quickly that people act differently around them after they know. Even though you're the same person they knew before your diagnosis, right? People start thinking you're not capable of things that they thought you're capable of before. People start talking to you, and I've said this a few times, there's been some situations that really surprised me because post-diagnosis, I felt like I was a kid in school sitting in the back chewing on crayons and drooling, and maybe like I could do shit here. I just have to learn things, right? Or I have to go down this journey. And again, it's like that pigeonhole of expectations where everybody has them and they build them in their own head. And we're constantly in this society where we're trying to live up to that person's expectations or this person's expectations when we don't even know internally what our own expectations are, could be and should be of ourselves, right? So it's, I mean, we could talk for hours and hours and hours and go on 10,000 weeks about this, but I think it really does start with our education system. And like you were saying before, with the bells and things, not that we don't need structure, because if you talk to most neurodivergent people, they crave structure. I crave structure, but I need a certain type of structure that allows me to be chaotic in the midst of it. Other people need rigid structure. I drive my mom and my brother crazy because if they say that something's at this time and this is what we're doing, that's at that time, that's what they're doing. And I come in like a whirlwind and go, oh, we're not doing that now. We're doing this, and we're 5 minutes and we'll do it. And it's like the chaos that creates for them, right? It's something else entirely. So it's like when we're telling kids that things need to be this way, we need to understand that not all kids can be that way. Not all kids learn that way. Not all people think that way. And that's okay. I think I'd recommend it to you, ADHD 2.0, and it might be in that book, or maybe it's in Stolen Focus that they talk about it. A lot of the times the kids in school that get put into the special programs, like the advanced programs and the genius and whatever, often end up failing out of them. And the reason, and maybe it's Simon Sinek that talks about this, but the gifted and talented programs, that's what I'm talking about, right? Because you find like, yeah, somebody that's maybe a bit of a savant, or they're an excellent musician and they're really good in this structured environment and taking exams and doing these things. So they score really highly and they get put into gifted and talented programs where they can explore their creativity. Well, that's not what they were good at. They were good at the structure, right? And the kids that are climbing up the walls and yelling and creating problems for the teachers like me that would chew gum, write my own behavior slip, send myself out of class and then send myself back in again when I felt like it. True story. The teacher would come out and be like, come back in. I'd be like, no, stay down here. Come back in when it's time. So then I'd walk back in and be like, I haven't told you to come back in. I'm like, well, it's time for me to come back in. I was a rebel, big time. But for somebody like me, I lived for sports. I got the school sports award. I got the award for all aspects of school life because I like to be into all sorts of different things, right? I needed that level of energy. I would have needed a talented program where I could learn science outside instead of in a classroom, where I could go and see nature interacting with it and experiencing it, right? But I didn't get that. I was in these rigid classes And that's me and Ian talk about that. That's when I started to fail school and not my potential, because our first school let us work at our own pace and do whatever we wanted up until the age of 12, 13. But we changed schools. So I was 8 and he was like 11, 12 at the time. And then he went to private school. So he ended up in this really rigid, structured situation where it helped him a lot. Whereas for me, it did the opposite. And I stopped loving maths and science, things like that, because it just wasn't cool anymore. Because I'd sit there and read books and do Bunsen burner shit. Yeah, it's interesting, right? That our school systems are not set up for people to succeed, yet we tell them the standards that they're going to fail against. And then workplaces are not set up anymore for people to succeed. There is no onboarding in a lot of companies. There is no company knowledge and transfer. And this is our why. This is why we exist. This is what we're all about. This is where the idea came from, and etc. How do we then expect people to know what they're good at when we measure them by how well they can take a test and not how good of a person they are to each, right? Or we're measuring them on whether or not they managed to remember like Romeo and Juliet, and whether or not this was talking about this and use certain language and whatever else, right? And instead of having them learn to be emotionally intelligent, which is what you need in a workplace, right? You don't need Romeo and Juliet in a workplace. You need emotional intelligence, which people keep talking about Gen Z. I think that they're wrong about Gen Z not getting things, but yeah, we've done an entire generation a massive disservice because they don't know emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Right. And we've completely cut that out of schools, and kids don't even play in the streets anymore. I mean, our neighborhood is a tight neighborhood and everybody knows each other and they know each other's kids, because the kids are out on the block with the different generations of cousins, parents, and people, right? And Black neighborhoods get a lot of shit from people who've clearly never really experienced and being in a Black neighborhood, unless they just drove through and thought they had to wind their windows up. But the intergenerational community that still exists here is phenomenal because, right, the kids are out on the street playing. When I talk to my neighbors, they know what's going on in Iran. They know what's going on in Palestine. They know what's going on in Russia. They know they can tell you what's going on with the economy and things. But when I moved here, people were like, why do you want to live in Harlem? Oh, it's full of gangbangers and stuff. And yeah, those gangbangers probably know more about world affairs and economics than you could ever hope to learn in your entire life. And the biggest difference is you had opportunities that they weren't granted by way of where they live and the school system that they were thrown into, where if they want to go to a good school, they've got to travel for an hour on a subway or whatever it is. So, but the skills and the knowledge of the people in the neighborhood is second to none. We have people that live there fixing cars and somebody else down there. And it's this guy that on the next street that works out the back of the van and fixes appliances and things like that. And it's everybody knows in the neighborhood who the skilled people are and where to go to get those things. And that is missing. We don't have that level of, okay, you don't have to go to school and get a qualification per se to do these things. Let's find what you're good at and let's help nurture you, because it doesn't all have to be about maths, English, and science that you'll probably never use again.
Here, I think there's so much to unpack, and thank you for going on that venture. Because from school and then as an analogy to the workplace, I think what you've hit upon, and I don't really know any Malcolm Gladwell,
Yeah,
but he talks prospecting. And I think that's from Blake, and he has an analogy about NHL players. Do you know the story?
maybe not. I think I read the tipping points. I don't know that I read.
Blake,
I might have it.
I mean, they're all just a bunch of stories woven together. So you can actually just pick a chapter and read. He was doing a study on how NHL players, most of the professional players, their birthdays are in January, February, and March. and how it's not necessarily skill-based, but they happen to be the oldest of the grade, which means they are the physically bigger than everybody else, which means they get more of the ice time, which allows them to develop more skills and allows them to get better even from the high school level. So he also made an analogy about talent scouts in the NFL and how they don't necessarily do the best job at finding the most talented athletes on a certain level because they actually, this is the generality of it. He's saying how there's only a certain couple slots for talent scouts to pick for their next roster of for rookie players, and how they're doing a disservice in identifying all the talents of the talent, and how you should be able to, if there are three people that are talented versus one, you pick three versus one. Sports is a very interesting thing because it's obviously who is good and who's right. Whoever scores the most touchdowns, it's quantifiable. You can notice that, especially in high school, where you were talking about how maybe certain skills, intellectual skills aren't developed yet. So physical skills, athleticism makes a lot of sense. And I was not at so I did not shine in high school, and that was okay. I made up for it other ways, being a creative person. But the byline of that is prospect, right? And identifying talents in the right way, in the right pool. And so the analogy I want to bring to that is, if human resources was more efficient, they would be able to identify those gaps in people's strengths and opportunities, where they were able to gauge, okay, this person is great in this level of this project. This is where you need to do a handoff. Or this person's burnt out.
I would not.
I don't mean to brag on HR.
No, I actually like that you asked that question, because I think that there are a lot of HR people that understand that some of these tools aren't necessarily used effectively or in the right way, or a band-aid for different things. I think what needs to happen is, from the top down, from CEOs to COOs to HR teams to individual managers and heads of departments and wherever else, need to really and truly understand what it means to work with a person that maybe has some kind of a difference. And it goes beyond neurodiversity, because there are lots of people out there that have silent disabilities as well.
Sure.
That impact on them in very similar ways. And again, it's this old school thinking. We've got to have bums on seats so that I can see that you're being productive. So we could have those water cooler moments. So we can have this, that, and the other, right? And it's this antiquated way of thinking that we don't have to have those things. What we need to have is something that works for what you're trying to achieve, right? Because forcing somebody that is maybe autistic to have water cooler moments that they're not comfortable with in a group chat with a camera on or whatever is not necessarily going to see that person's best potential. But finding a person that's able to do Slack chats with them, or maybe work on a different level to bring their water cooler moments to a group session, right? It's going to help that person shine. And a lot of people, again, if somebody can't present to their team verbally, then they're not going to be a good manager. Well, maybe that person will be an excellent manager if you find a way to work through that communication thing with them. Maybe they're not confident because they've never been given the confidence. Maybe for now you accept Slack, and then you build in training for that person or coaching so that they can build the skill up of what it is that they find difficult about giving feedback. And I've had years of training of delivering difficult feedback, and I'd still struggle with delivering difficult feedback. But I've had the training year over again. It becomes something that you do more natural then, right? But it's to make an assumption that everybody in a management position should be able to verbally deliver feedback, and if they can't do it, they shouldn't be a manager. When you hired them for a skill set or a strength they have that your company lacks, to me said you don't know what to do with somebody's strengths, because you should help optimize their 70% and then find a way to compensate that 30 with them. So yeah, you're, as a manager, you're going to have paperwork to do. It's inevitable. I get it. You don't like having meetings and taking notes. Tough shit. As a manager, you're going to have to deliver feedback, because that person's relying on you for knowledge transfer, for coaching, for training, for helping them become more, right? But let's find a way that works, and we'll compensate this other 30. For now, do you need somebody, an HR person, to be with you to help you deliver that in a way that's insightful? Do you need us to practice doing a role play so that you can get comfortable? Do you need a discussion planner to take with you to keep you on track? This shit you can do for people instead of just going, that's just not going to work for us. You need to be able to do that. So I can rant about companies' bottom lines and return on investment and shit till the cows come home, because what a lot of companies don't tell people is we work for our investors. Our bottom line is their next vacation or boat or house or mortgage payment or whatever else it is. So if the world slows down and the economy slows down, or we slow down, they're not going to get as much money. So we're going to have to get rid of a whole bunch of people so that they can keep getting the same amount of money. And in the interim, you're going to have to do all these jobs that you're not qualified for, that you didn't sign up for, that you may not be skilled for, that may not work to your strengths, right? And then everybody's then working in these pressure cooker things. And it's right. Now we need to hire because we've got a little bit more money and we understand that everybody's getting burned out and we can't exist this. It's not sustainable. So you hire somebody new. Great, we've got this new Gen Z person and they've got a 1.0 GPA and awesome. And they've gone through a school system that nannied them and told them which files to open, when to open them, how to do it. Everything was created for them to work from. Nothing was given to them to build and create themselves. So if you're in that environment in a company now where you've gotten rid of all of your grunt workers essentially to keep the wheels going and whatever else, and you're going to then replace them with these people, better make sure you've got the training in place, because my niece hadn't had any formal work training and then she's applying for jobs and she doesn't know what to tell them when she's going to interviews because she hasn't worked.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Really tough.
where do you go with that? So that's what we work with for was understanding what a workplace expects from you. And some of it is deal with it. That's life. But we were able to give her that information with tough shit. We've all had to do it. And I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but you've got to go through that grind to get to here, and nobody gets to here without going through that. And if you do, bottom's going to fall out from under it because you won't know what to do when shit goes wrong. So let's help you get in that entry level in a place that works for you and figure out how you will work best in that environment. And then we'll find the right company for you to give to, because you'll want to give and they'll want to receive what you have to give. We're just living in this really weird work world and school world where education isn't preparing people for work and work isn't prepared for people that aren't prepared for work. But
That's a meme right there.
all of the people that want to make money on whatever it is that you're doing want to make money. So it's, well, let's get rid of the expensive people that know what they're doing, so we can get cheaper people that we assume have been educated, right? But it's, well, yeah, they've got the technical knowledge, but you don't get taught processing skills. You just follow a process in a sphere, right? You don't get taught how to build things. You get taught how other people have built things. It's not until master's level that you then start doing the thing. Up until that level, you're learning the thing. So yeah, it's everything's backwards right now, and we've gone so far to the extremes in all of our systems and how we want shit to be, and corporate lingo and terminology and all that insanity. And it's like, how's about we go back to the beginning? And I'm a big fan in taking steps back And I've never been afraid to take a step back either. I think sometimes the fastest way to move forward is by recognizing when you need to stop and take 5 steps. Because sometimes you just need to get on a different path and it's like all systems go. So like I'm a big fan of failing fast and standing back up. So fail, it's kind of the technology thing, but it's like fail quickly, get your feelings out, and then we get back up and we figure out what we've learned from that failure. And I don't think enough kids are told that it's okay to fail. I don't think
Very
people are not told.
perfectionist.
And when you're neurodivergent, that perfectionism is like something else entirely that we can talk about another week. And then we don't teach people it's okay to change your mind. How many people have career changes in their 30s and 40s? And now the science backs it up that our brains don't even mature until we're in our late 20s. So we're asking a bunch of kids whose brains aren't mature to decide what they want to do for the rest of their lives and then wondering why in their 30s they return home or leave their job or go traveling or do whatever it is. And it's like, because finally our brain has matured enough for us to begin to become comfortable in our own bodies and understand what's going on. So I think we need to give that kind of allowance now that like this career may be your forever career or it may not be, but let's make the most of it and see what we can give you and what you can take from it. Because if we can help you create a better you and a better community around you, then you'll take that into your next role and it'll kind of spread the love, right? It's like the smile goes around the world minute or whatever it is. It's kind of that, right? This doesn't have to be forever and it doesn't have to be what you want it to be, but it can be that thing to go to the next level. And it's okay for this not to be for everything, but let's have a good time while you're here and make sure you walk away with as much knowledge, experience, joy, good memories as possible, because something else, and we'll end on this because I know Saga's having her first behavior training today and it's 2:00. Yeah, I think it's just so important that we as humanity look at the world we've created and where we're at now and how AI and different things are coming into it and actually start working towards people living fulfilling and productive lives, because we can all have a job. FDR did a wonderful job of it, which again, I love FDR. I could talk about it for years, but there is something out there for everybody. And I think Burning Man exemplifies that, because nobody is paid to go to Burning Man, yet people turn up and create a full city and work voluntarily while they're there. And I think that says a lot about us as humans, not just about neurodiverse humans, because even neurotypical people are neurodiverse, right? We all have these different brains. But it says a lot about what people will do when they're engaged and passionate and believe in what they're doing versus what they'll do because they have to do it because somebody told them they need to pay a mortgage.
Beautiful. That's a great ending. So much has resonated. We're going to have to put this to another episode because we have our heart out. But on that note, I'm so glad we have this dialogue going. I'm excited to see the steps ahead because I'm on board. I want to learn more about the other members of the organization. And on that note, I'm willing to take a pause in my career and also take a step back. And I don't mind going back down the mountain a little bit to come back up again and see what's up. Realizing how corporations, you don't have innovation from the entry level and you have to do something repetitive to get there, but realizing that you have to earn some certain stripes to get there. But that being said, Lois, thank you so much for spending time with you today. We're going to keep going on this because hopefully people who are listening to this or watching this right now, some value out of it. Feel free to comment or ask questions because I don't have all the questions, but I'm along for the ride as well.
And I certainly don't have all the answers either. And I thank you for coming on this journey with us. And I can't wait for you to actually talk to the other members of our team